mindful metaverse. So there's three. I'll let Flavia introduce them first, but just going to hand the reins directly to you and introduce Flavia. So thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and I am warmed by your dedication of being here, and I know we are the last event, so thank you so much for being here. This is an important topic. It really, really is. Now, my name is Flavia Kenyon. I'm a British barrister, and I've been a barrister for 17 years. And my area of expertise is cyber. And I say cyber because it's all-encompassing, from blockchain technologies all the way to the metaverse. I am joined here this afternoon, and I'm delighted to tell you we've got a wonderful panel of experts, every single one of them. To my right is Daniela Medlano, Richard Kiswick, and Dr. Christina Yang Zhang. Some applause, please. Great. Now, as you can, actually you can't see, we're here to talk about sustainability in the metaverse. And yes, at the bottom, you can just about glean it. Yes. This is a very, very important topic. And it's such an important topic that it has reached the European level. And it is, believe it or not, and will be actually a legal requirement as part of markets in crypto assets, MiCA, which is the most comprehensive legal framework that we have addressing crypto assets coming out from the EU. Now, part of that legal framework, and my lovely panel here will discuss that, there is the requirement now for crypto assets issuers, so therefore any project on a blockchain that involves crypto assets, part of their public white paper, they will have to assess, importantly, the impact their crypto asset has on the environment. This is huge. This is huge. And just pause and think of the consequences of that. And as we are advancing, and we're using this beautiful technology of building all this incredible metaverse that they will talk about, what are the implications, therefore, for everything else that we are going to build across Web3 into the metaverse? Are we able to build a green metaverse? Are we able to be compliant with ESG requirements and indeed with human rights requirements? And climate change goes straight to the heart of that. But enough from me. I will let my lovely panel introduce themselves individually to tell you what they do. And I would love to hear from them, and I'm sure you will agree, what they make of the new MiCA legal framework. Daniela.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So I'm Daniela Simerleno. I've been working in the space around 7 months. And what I'm about is well-being. I'm a positive psychologist, and I'm currently working in Web3 education, but also and mostly in creative AI for emotionally uplifting. So I believe in the positive use of tech, and I believe that sustainability is, yes, about the environment, but also about making it sustainable for our well-being and us as humans. So that's me.
Richard?
I'm Richard Kiswick from the Unseen Agency. We're a Web3 creative agency doing everything from inception to execution, mostly working in sports, brands, and athletes. I first got into blockchain when I was with the British Coffee Association Sustainability Committee, looking at how we can use blockchain in that supply chain. In terms of sustainability, I created a compostable coffee capsule for Nespresso machines about 8 years ago and launched a company called Halo Coffee.
Hey. Yes, yes.
Which is a hot mess now. But yeah, it's kept a few million capsules out of the ground, and I exited that company. And so in terms of sustainability, I live in Bristol now, which is a real hotbed, and there's a lot of tech and a lot of really, really interesting stuff going on, particularly in terms of investment. We're quite plugged in through the sports world into very large investments that are being made, and exactly that, like, I want to go on, but like BlackRock and how they're dealing with your requirements, particularly in the Web3, is absolutely fascinating.
Fantastic. Christina?
Hello, everyone. I'm Christina Yan Zhang from the Metaverse Institute. So I started the journey a little bit early in 2006. And as part of my PhD, using digital twin in the Metaverse environment to simulate and augment real-world construction, engineering, and architectural projects. I'm very passionate about anything to do with UN Sustainable Development Goals, because I feel quite strongly, especially on a personal experience, this summer, the weather in the UK is literally intolerable. And my parents, they're still in China. And my mom was telling me that she has to hide somewhere in the mountains because in the city where they are located, the average temperature is 45 degrees Celsius every day. And some part of China, where in Sichuan, they have 100 million population, the whole province was suffering from severe droughts to the point that there is no enough electricity to support 100 million people to survive 45 degrees for 1 month, which is really, really, terrifying. And so I feel like it's really time every single one of us have to become an environmentalist, to the point that if we don't do it now, it will be too late. It's a survival issue, to be or not to be. That's the question.
Thank you very much, Christina. Now, can we build a green metaverse? And how do we reconcile the extraordinarily advanced computing power that we see, such as, for example, proof of work mechanism, a consensus mechanism that Bitcoin, for example, is using? How do we reconcile that consumption of energy with our binding requirements to be green, to protect the environment, to measure our footprint? What are your views? Yes, Christina?
Okay, I think it's really important that we need to start with decarbonize all the data center around the world, because everything we're talking about in the metaverse, whether it's VR, AR, XR, or things like crypto, digital assets, things like blockchain, is all based on, super, consuming of the computing power. So I think that's already taking place by all the major data centers around the world. But then the question will be, with the same amount of computing power and electricity generated, what's the percentage of renewables they are using? Is that 100%? But then I guess we start to looking at what President Joe Biden said like a few months ago with very strong wording. And he was saying that crypto mining, especially Bitcoin mining, has impeded the United States as a country to achieve its UN SDG, to the point that they are looking at regulations to ensure it's going to be sustainable for the well-being of all the American people as well as citizens of the world.
Those are very strong words, and indeed it's a very strong message from America. And what is fascinating, that in the EU, through MiCA, they seem to have reached a compromise, because some of you may remember, originally the intention was to ban proof of work mechanism, which would have meant banning Bitcoin. I know that sounds maybe perhaps an oxymoron in terms. How do you ban Bitcoin? But suffice to say, they haven't, which I personally think it's a good thing. I'm not in favor of banning anything. I don't think that's the way forward. So therefore, what is that balanced approach? How do we address these issues? And what is the proportionality? How do we measure the impact truly? And this is the key. And you know what? Lawyers don't have those answers. Those answers have to come from tech. Those answers have to come from users of it as well. It has to be a concerted effort in understanding truly and measuring truly the impact of proof of work and the impact of mining, particularly Bitcoin mining. And what other solutions are there? Richard, for example, using alternative sources of energy. What's your view on that?
Yeah, just following on from the proof of work to proof of stake, I think before ETH moved to proof of stake, it was using in the high 70, like 72, 73 million cubic tons of carbon a year. And when it changed, it's now zero point 0.1. So it's 100,000, which is like, why did it take so long? And what was happening to that energy before?
Yes.
And I think YouTube is it's YouTube and then Bitcoin as the biggest offenders in that field. In terms of what's happening, I think with blockchain in general in this field, massive changes. I know that FIFA partnered with I always get it, Cardano or whatever. It's like number 4 blockchain.
Cardano?
No, Cardano is number 2. Cardano, I want to
I
say.
don't know. So,
No, it's not. It begins with an A. Aragon.
Aragon? Aragon?
Aragon. Could,
Yeah, Aragon.
I will Google it
I don't know.
subtly
I'll Google
after
it.
this. No. Now it's a quiz.
Okay.
Shout out anything.
We'll
beginning
Google
with
it
A.
afterwards.
Not Avalanche, but it was a massive thing, and that was a massive. And whatever you think of FIFA, we all have our opinions, but it was a huge deal for them, and they only got it because they're carbon negative, and that was the main thing that was in the contract on that side.
So how about using alternative sources of energy? Do you see an improvement? Do you know of projects that are using that as part of their supporting their consensus mechanism?
No, not off the top of my head, to be honest. Yeah, well, Kilos, there you go. Elena's in there. Not off the top of my head, it's not an area of my expertise, but what you said about the data centers and decarbonizing them is super interesting because the building of the data center and the deployment, I think, is where like 60 or 70% of the actual usage is, which is kind of, if you look at the metaverse side and how it could solve it, we were talking earlier about digital twins, which is proved through a long Ernst & Young study over the last couple of years that you can massively reduce your carbon footprint on a new build by using a digital twin in the metaverse to help you find all these savings. So that's, I think, not just having virtual events and cutting down on carbon, but actually using that technology in that way is going to make an impact and is going to make a difference if it's embraced.
That's a fascinating, positive use case of the technology that Daniela, in fact, mentioned. Daniela, what are your views?
Yeah, I was thinking more from like people and education side of it.
Yeah.
So before you lovely people arrived, I was talking with Flavia about Beacon. She said that it was going to be actually deployed by 2024, right?
Yes, it'll come into force, yeah.
So what I was thinking is one of the biggest beautiful learnings that we had from the COVID time is when the world has a real sense of urgency, everything comes out on education and mindset for people to actually, and companies to do whatever they have to do to take us out of it, if that makes sense. And I feel that, and that was worldwide, that didn't care about much on what do you actually do, what's your business about, are you in Web3 or Web2? It's something that it's for all of us, and definitely with that sense of emergency that we should be having, not because of the metaverse coming and holding a lot of more data to actually be produced, but because it's urgent. I believe that would be actually the start point of this. And thinking of the future generations, I was recently studying about that, and 90% of Gen Z and millennials are willing and understand climate change and one of the priorities of their own interests. 64% of them would actually be willing to buy a product of another one if it's sustainable. And most of them, like I think 50% of them spend around 11 to 13 hours in gaming, which is the strongest industry actually now doing something in the metaverse. And all of this to say that if we would be using the metaverse to engage in this gaming situation that they're actually already engaging with, to teach them about what can happen and what are the solutions for climate change, to implement MiCA in like earlier stages. And governments, this might sound Disney, but really, like, if governments took this as seriously as COVID, because we can't fail on our in real life because of a virtual life, is what I feel. So yeah, so in my case, it comes back to understanding the future generations and how to trigger them for the long term, but set a very huge sense of urgency now.
Very nicely put. So how about, therefore, we know what to expect from a legal point of view, and I'm already advising, I can tell you, blockchain startups, when they write their white paper, to look at ESG compliance. Huge part of it. So therefore, we've tackled a bit the E. Shall we look at the S, the social aspect of it? Because of course they go hand in hand. And particularly when we think of extending our physical reality into the virtual reality, how important is it, therefore, for you to ensure that what we are building in the virtual space doesn't harm the physical? Because there has to be, it seems to me, particularly from a legal perspective, social, environmental, and governance, a seamless transition, if you like, extension, if you like. So I just wonder what, I start with you, Daniela, if you don't mind, what you make of that, putting the emphasis very much on the S, on the social.
Yeah. So first, I think one of the first moments where I started wanting to work in well-being and corporations was because I met the B Corps. In 2007, they started as 81 corporations that were kind of flipping the sense of what's valuable and what makes a business to businesses that care about the social and environmental impact first. Nowadays, they have more than 5,000. And I just say this because I'm a voice of hope, and I believe that's something that gives us a message of there's hope, of this sense of mindset growing. The metaverse itself, it's merging with something that has already been moving, I think, since 2017 or even before, which is VR therapy. And VR therapy is based on the sense of triggering emotions in environments that can help us out with addictions, phobia, anxiety, PTSD, in meanings of healing without setting you out in an actual circumstance that you won't be able to manage, but triggering the emotions that can help you heal. I believe in healing the metaverse. I've organized and led meditation sessions in the metaverse. And people actually find it very interesting how those emotions are still placed there for good. On the other side, I also believe in ethical metaverse, which means if we understand that social media and the internet already has data about how it makes us feel in our identity, how it makes us feel in our need of likeliness or attention or feeding or of emotions that might not be coming from the right place, and emotions as joy, but from a shadowy place, we should be thinking of that in the metaverse, which means there's couple, like for example, there's this very cool project called Utopia Metaverse. And what they're aiming for as an ethical metaverse is that they are triggering a little notification for children when they've been there for more than 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, hey, you've been here enough, have fun, go in your real life, sometime we'll be here. 50% of the addiction of social media is FOMO. And socially wise, that's one of the most terrible things that has been happening in community building on the NFT space. And those NFTs are being used to be able to get you in the metaverse. So I think being aware mostly that we can choose which emotions to trigger in the metaverse as a tool. We can choose it for positive emotions, or we can choose it for emotions that might not be as helpful. And those emotions will be placed in reactions for people in real life. If I get mad because in the metaverse somebody harassed me, as it has happened already, I will go and expand that emotion to my family, friends, and children because it's real for me. It doesn't, the brain doesn't distinguish if it's the metaverse and in real life when it comes to emotions. So yeah, I think that would be my first take on of this.
Gosh, yes, fantastic. Thank you for that comprehensive response. Richard, would you like to add anything to that?
Hard to follow.
I was going to say.
Pretty awesome. Just saying what you were about children then, I really do believe this, that we have to treat what everyone's, irrespective of what you're doing, or your business or your role or your company, you kind of have to treat the metaverse, whatever that may be, as a child, responsibly. You have to build things. I believe you build things that need to exist, and we're at a very early stage, so we have a great deal of responsibility, and we can make it whatever we believe it should be. And I've got a 2-year-old kid who's absolutely the love of my life, and he lights me up. And I'm very conscious of how I'm parenting him and how he's growing and what boundaries he's got. And, going back to the new EU, the MICA, it is about setting the boundaries and consensus around that. And that's really important for me. And I think with the metaverse, with your business, it's really easy, not just as a business case, but also socially, to measure what you're doing. On one side of the seesaw is your impact, your social, your environment, and also, is it financially rewarding? Is there remuneration? And on the other side is, if this doesn't exist, would people wish it did? And if it needs to exist, go and make it. But if not, you need to add more to the other side, or take away if you're building something that doesn't. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before I invite Christina, may I just add something which is made me think from your fantastic response. As a lawyer, of course, I look at how does one build accountability in the metaverse. Oh, that in itself is a huge task. And obviously that is underpinned by how do we build our identity in the metaverse.
Yes.
And of course, it becomes phenomenally fascinating. And even Hollywood obviously have made now Avatar 2 is coming soon. What happens and what is the relationship between one's avatar and one's physical identity? And there's so much there that we need to think about. And again, I'll go back to measuring the environmental impact. That is very important for all of us to contribute and have this kind of dialogue and understanding, from lawyers to tech to policymakers to experts. There has to be a concerted effort for us to address all these issues, because they're huge issues that are going to impact the world, because the metaverse is obviously transnational and So, Christina, with that in mind, and again with the emphasis on the S, what are your views?
My view is, let's going back to the very basics of Web3 and the metaverse. The beauty of the whole range of technology is all about decentralization and empowerment of individuals who do not traditionally have a voice to really get involved in major issues like sustainability. So how we can play that, coupled with traditional top-down approach from governments and all the major players, is the key. And I think what we can do from the very basic avatar, we can treat that as a digital twin of every single one of us. And we can use Internet of Things, connecting that with, say, the smart building of this environment. With digital twin, as you mentioned, EY reports that 50% reduction of carbon footprint on average. And if we extend that further into smart city of the whole Greater London, which I recently gave a presentation at the World Congress for Smart Cities to like governments worldwide.
Yes, yeah.
And
I know
that was like really, really fascinating because a lot of them are worried about we have all this whole range of amazing technologies and governments say we want our city to be the future. In the end, it's beautiful, but no one wants to live there. So it needs to have this kind of public, empowerment to get involved to make it, really work. And if we're looking at even larger scale, we start talking about digital twin of the Earth, which currently there are two major projects being conducted. One by the European Commission, and they put 150 million euros to looking at how to prevent extreme weather and also try to intervene before any like disaster happen, like earthquake, tsunami, etc. across Europe. Another one is by NVIDIA, the big player using Omniverse, professional digital twin to engage with more than 300 top enterprise worldwide, looking at how to prevent like the wildfire in the United States in collaboration with Lockheed Martin, the big defense player, with BMW looking at advanced manufacturing, how to really reduce carbon footprints, combining robots, humans together. So I think all of this coming together actually really give us hope, because the hope is we have the technology make the whole carbon environment achieving net zero possible, but also at the same time, everyone can get involved and they can feel that they can contribute, which
Yes.
will be amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a great response. And we also need to ensure that, therefore, particularly when we talk about smart cities, that we're not building a soulless shell, and that we do maintain our humanity and our human touch. It makes me think of Ian Forster, The Machine Fails. And that we do build that bridge, cyber bridge, if you like, between our humanity, us as humans, and this wonderful vision of the future, of the virtual future, and maintaining that and building that bridge across. But that was, yes, so thank you. That's really important. Now, I don't know if we have any more, but just to conclude perhaps, well, we're running out of time, I know. Just to conclude, does the panel agree, therefore, as a conclusion, that there's great hope for the future and that we can build a sustainable green metaverse? What do you think? Briefly.
The European Commission already writes a metaverse strategy which they plan to implement from next year onwards. And the first point is that human-centered metaverse strategy. So it's all about what the whole panel is talking about. We need to ensure people, the general public, have every single point they feel is necessary in the center of the metaverse, in line with 17 goals of UN SDG to make it work. And I think we are on perfect progress there.
Fantastic. Richard?
Just from sitting on this panel,
Yes?
which is like all-star, yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. Daniela?
What I believe is, as long as education is there, as long as we use the metaverse for educating the younger generations on how to take care of the planet, and we stop marketing the metaverse as be who you ever want to be in the metaverse, but be yourself in real life, love that version, and bring that to the metaverse to add value, there is what we'll start thinking of a sustainable metaverse in the future.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I too endorse everything that's just been said. And yes, the future is bright. But it all depends on us, what we do with the tech. Well, thank you very, very much for staying.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's a really awesome panel. So yeah, just one final round of applause for all of our panelists here.